very good evening. Welcome to the World Now at 4 on Hills TV. I am Uduak Daniel. First, let's talk the headlines. And on the headlines, FRSC warns against night travels, speeding. Still on the headlines, let's just go on a short break. When we come back, it's a bit more on the World Now at 4 on Hills TV. Apologies and welcome back. Still talking the headlines. FRSC warns against night travel, speeding. Also on the headlines, Angola opposition files legal challenge against vote. Bringing you more headlines, gun jams during bid to kill Argentina vice president. And on sports, Williams sisters lose in first round. And now the news in detail. Osibajo made a call on Thursday during a lecture on a just and equitable energy transition for Africa at the Center for Global Development in Washington, D.C., USA, according to a statement by spokesman Laolu Akande today. The statement was titled, "In U.S. Forum Lecture, Osibajo advocates debt for climate swaps, greater participation in global carbon markets for African nations." According to him, the debt for climate swap deal is a win-win for creditor developed nations and Africa. Justifying the rationale behind such a debt swap deal, the vice president submitted that the commitment to it would increase the fiscal space for climate-related investments and reduce the debt burden for participating developing countries. Still talking the story, Osibajo also proposed the greater participation of African countries in the global carbon markets while exploring financing options for energy transition. And away from that story, Federal Road Safety Corps, that is the FRSC, has urged citizens to refrain from embarking on nighttime travel during the last 4 months of the year, citing poor visibility due to darkness and the increased number of road accidents emanating from nighttime travel and speeding. The FRSC boss is speaking to journalists in Abuja on Thursday, noting that the FRC targeted minimal road crashes and 0 fatalities during this period. He also noted that as part of measures put in place to guarantee a safer motoring environment, especially during the Ember month, the Corps came up with the idea of special patrols and mega public enlightenment rallies in motor parks, which involved the massive deployment of personnel and logistics to motor parks for aggressive sensitization and of the roads, particularly around identified black spots for the containment of the perennial traffic gridlocks and accompanying hazards. BO also noted that there's been an aggressive clampdown on unregistered motorcycles across the country, adding that it was necessary for curbing the activities of criminals. And away from that story, air component of Operation World Punch, in continuation of intensive air operations on 30 August 2022, neutralized 14 terrorists while conducting air interdiction missions against identified terrorist hideouts at Alhaji Isiaka location and Kuduru in Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. The strikes, as revealed by reliable sources, were successful as the terrorists were eliminated while several others sustained injuries. Sources said that similar strikes were also undertaken at Udawa along Kaduna-Baraningwari Road in Kaduna State after receiving intelligence of terrorist activities and cow rustling in the area. In the northeast, strikes were also carried out same day at the Amshile and Gagash, both terrorist locations east of Maiduguri. The locations were attacked severally, with few surviving terrorists seen fleeing from the point of impact and hiding under nearby trees, which were subsequently attacked. And now let's move over to Rivers State and have you know that the governor, Nyesom Wike, has hit back at the national chairman of his party, that is the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, Ayorcha Ayu, for calling him and others children. Wike described Ayu as an ingrate because those he ridiculed as children were the same people who brought him from the gutters to the chairmanship of the party. The governor made the repost at the launch of a project in Port Harcourt, the state capital.
As a party, as a chairman of the party, who wants to win an election, your business is to bring peace to your party. Your business is not to divide your party. Your business is not to show arrogance to your party. The Bible said we are children. Yes, the children brought you to the chairman of the party.
Relatedly, former Deputy National Chairman of the PDP, Chief Olabode George, said it was important for the party to address the current lopsided structure of its National Working Committee, that is the NWC, before the commencement of the 2023 election campaigns. George stated that the office of National Chairman should come to the South for the sake of fairness and balance. The NWC might have resolved to move ahead with the composition of the PDP Presidential Campaign Council with a National Executive Committee, that is the NEC meeting, slated for next week after it was initially called off last week. Ayu had in an interview said children who did not know how the party was formed could not force him to resign. The statement was an apparent reference to Wike and allies who had, since the party's presidential primaries, waged a campaign against its leadership. When we return, news from other parts of Africa. Don't go away. Welcome back to News, the World Now at 4 on Hills TV. And still talking the story, this time getting on to Libya. Let's have you know that Libya could have a new special envoy by the end of this Friday, according to reports and a letter seen by reporters. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres plans to appoint a former Senegalese minister to lead efforts towards peace in Libya. If the 15-member UN Security Council approves the appointment by consensus, Abdoulaye Bathily could take up the position immediately. Pending the Council's approval, Bathily would replace John Kubis, who stepped down last December. Libya has had little peace since the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that ousted longtime autocrat Muammar Gaddafi, splitting the nation in 2014 between rival Eastern and Western factions and dragging in regional powers. Libyan oil output, a prize for the warring groups, has repeatedly been shut off. Libya's worst fighting for 2 years suddenly hit the capital, Tripoli, last Saturday. The clashes erupted and ended suddenly. And now to Angola, and having you know that Angola's biggest opposition party, that is the UNITA, UNITA, says it has filed a legal challenge against the results of last week's election. The governing MPLA party, which has been in power since 1975, was declared the winner of the vote, although with a reduced majority. A senior UNITA official, Faustino Mumbika, told French news agency that a complaint filed with the National Electoral Commission, that is the NEC, on Thursday, UNITA, which achieved its best ever result election, has said the poll was marred by irregularities. We now move to other parts of the world. After this break, do stay with us. Always a delight to have you back. This is The World Now at 4 on Hills TV. Supporters of Donald Trump's Make America Great Again, that is the MAGA agenda, are a threat to democracy, President Joe Biden has said. He said in a primetime speech in Pennsylvania that MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards. The Democratic president delivered a speech on Thursday night from Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where the U.S. Declaration of Independence was signed. He picked up his 2020 campaign theme of restoring the soul of America. He said he was not condemning all 74 million Americans who voted for Trump 2 years ago. Not every Republican, not even a majority of Republicans, is MAGA Republicans, he said. Biden said Trump supporters thought of the mob who stormed the U.S. Capitol last year as patriots rather than insurrectionists.
We must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love.
And to some life-threatening story, let's move on to Argentina and have you know that Argentina's vice president has narrowly avoided assassination after gunman's weapon jammed as he aimed at her. Footage shows the moment Cristina Fernandez, the Kirchner, surrounded by a mob of supporters, found herself face-to-face with a loaded weapon. The former president was returning home from court where she faces allegations of corruption. She denies the charges. The police said the gunman, who local media identified as a 35-year-old Brazilian man, has been taken into custody. They are attempting to establish a motive for the attack on the left-leaning politician who was Argentina's president from 2007 to 2015 and its first lady for 4 years before that. President Alberto Fernandez revealed the gun was loaded with 5 bullets but failed to fire when triggered. Video circulating on social media shows the gun emerging from the crowd as Miss Fernandez, the Kirchner, approaches. She initially appeared confused by what is going on, ducking down to retrieve an object dropped on the floor. And away from that, let's get on to UK and have you know the UK's former ambassador to Myanmar and her husband have each been sentenced to 1 year in prison by the country's military authorities. Vicky Bowman and Hetien Lin, a former political prisoner, were charged with breaching immigration laws. The couples were arrested last week in their home in Yangon. The case is likely to be about wider political concerns than immigration offenses for which foreigners are rarely prosecuted in Myanmar. Bowman, a fluent Burmese speaker, is a well-known member of Myanmar's small international community. In its statement, it added that Bowman had dedicated many years of her life to strengthening social and economic development in Myanmar. Bowman and her husband were detained when they returned to the city from a home they have in Shan State. Military authorities charged them both with failing to register her as living at a different address. And now let's go on a short break, and when we come back, it will be more on The World Now at 4 with business news. Stay with us. Quite eventful to have you back, and this is the Business Desk on Our World Now at 4 on Hills TV. Talking business, Director General of the Debt Management Office, that is the DMO, Patience Oniha, on Thursday attributed Nigeria's high debt profile to lack of revenues and approval of the annual budget with a deficit by the National Assembly, which increased the debt stock of the country, noting that Nigeria had been running on budget deficit for many decades.
Yes. And that's if you go all the way from 2017. So we also publish that data actually every half yearly to show you what the share of the federal is and the share of the state. Okay, so I think speaking specifically to the question, and it's a genuine concern that Nigerians ask, and you as stakeholders in Nigeria with responsibilities for borrowing as well. Debt has grown, and that has come really from the annual budget. Okay, so there are 3 levels where those borrowings have increased. We've been running deficit budget for many, many years. Okay, so each time you approve a budget with a deficit, by the time we raise that money, because when you approve it, you've given us a mandate to borrow, authority to borrow, it will reflect in the debt stock. Okay, so debt stock will increase. Also remember that the states are also borrowing, so we add their own to it. They have laws also governing their borrowings.
The DMO-DG justified the past borrowings, pointing to the modernization of the airports and the construction of more rail lines and roads. In his remarks, Deputy Chairman of the committee, Seydou Abdoulaye, who presided over the session, said that the country was on a good pedestal to keep borrowing. And now let's get on to have you know that more than 30 suspected illegal miners were arrested on Thursday during a police operation in South Africa's Benoni town in Gauteng province, Sowetan reports comes through. The suspects aged between 13 and 54 were found to have explosives and other mining equipment, saying police spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Mavela Masundo. He said they will all face charges for their activities, possessions, and other crimes. Lieutenant Masundo also said the detainees are all suspected to be undocumented foreign nationals and will therefore be processed by the Department of Home Affairs. To matters that concern the G7, members of the G7 have agreed to impose a price cap on Russian oil in a bid to hit Moscow's ability to finance the war in Ukraine. Finance ministers said the cap on crude oil and petroleum products would also help reduce global energy prices. The cap will be set at a level based on a range of technical inputs. Russia said it would stop selling oil to countries that imposed price caps. Still to come on The World Now at 4. It's sports. Don't go away.
Very good evening to you and welcome to Sports News on World Nat 4. I am Richard Badung. On the news, ahead of the second leg clash of the final African Nations Championship qualifier against Nigeria on Saturday, the Ghana Football Association announced that Black Galaxies' friendly match against FC Samatex has been cancelled. The GFA made the announcements on their Twitter handle. According to the body, the decision to cancel the friendly was to enable the coach and the Walker's side focus on their all-important clash against Nigeria at the Moshood Abiola National Stadium in Abuja on Saturday. Meanwhile, Ghana holds a 2-0 advantage from the first leg and will hope to get the job done when they travel to Ghana or to Nigeria later today for the second leg. The Chan Eagles have made it known that they are prepared for the game on Saturday as they hope to turn things around when they clash with the Black Galaxies of Ghana. Next year's edition of the Chan tournament holds in Algeria. We'll take you away from Africa now, where Turkish club Fenerbahce say they have agreed to sign Belgium striker Michy Batshuayi from Chelsea. The 28-year-old joined the Blues in 2018 and his contract with them runs out of course, at the end of the season. Batshuayi has had 5 loan spells while at Chelsea, with stints at Borussia Dortmund, Valencia, twice at Crystal Palace and Besiktas. It looked set for a move to Nottingham Forest, but it fell through on Thursday's transfer deadline day. Fenerbahce say Batshuayi is scheduled to travel to Istanbul to complete the move. Still talking about the deadline transfers that took place yesterday, Liverpool assigned Juventus midfielder Arthur Melo from Juventus. The Brazilian, who played for Barca before moving to Juventus, has played for Juventus last term but not played in this present campaign. Juventus say there is a €4.5 million loan fee and €37.5 option to buy if Liverpool shows interest. And that's the sport news on World Now at 4. I'm Richard Badung. Back to Udwak Daniel for the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Richard Badung, for that one on sports. And that's the much we can take on the World Now at 4. But before we go, a quick look at our top stories. We told you FRSC warns against night travel, speeding. We also brought to the fore the fact that Angola opposition files legal challenge against votes. We brought to the fore the fact that gun jams during bid to kill Argentina vice president. And on sports, we brought to the fore Williams sisters lose in first round. Remember to visit us on Facebook at Hales TV, Instagram at Hales TV. Our YouTube channel is at Hales TV. I am Udwak Daniel. Thank you for watching.